Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of This Agrarian Life with me, your host, Herrick Kimball. Today I'm back here at my kitchen table in my house and I'm working on clothespins. In a previous episode, I showed you how I was inspecting every clothespin half for flaws and putting the seconds in a box and fixing anything that I could fix with my knife to make it right. And now today I'm going to show you how I assemble the clothespins and then how, as needed, I adjust them. So we're going to close up here on these tools so you can see a little bit better what I'm doing. Okay, so here we are. I'm in clothespin assembly mode, and this is a tool, a device, a fixture, a jig, whatever you want to call it, that I use to assemble the clothespins. And actually, what I call it is an O'Neill pinner, because it was invented by my friend Tom O'Neill, who was my friend that I met in prison. And he was a co-worker, not an inmate. And Tom is an organic farmer in Cato, New York. And he was also a pattern maker. And he came to the prison to work for, 10 years or so before he retired. He's older than me. He's a smart guy. And he and I were brainstorming about clothespins years ago when I came up with this idea. And I had to come up with a way to easily assemble hundreds and thousands of clothespins. And Tom came up with this idea. This was actually made in prison and smuggled out. Don't tell anybody. And the way it works is that the clothespins spring, and these are the springs that are made in the USA. They're stainless steel, and they're custom made for me. They fit right in this fixture, just like so. And then what I do is I take my fingernail and just a little bit, I open that up. And then I slide in. I usually do this with my body up against I slide that in like that. So I've got half a clothespin. Then I flip it over, put it back on that peg, and now I can push right here. It will open up and allow me to slide that in, and the clothespin is assembled. So I am doing this here at the table, but I typically will do this in the evening, sitting in a recliner, watching a movie or a documentary. I have a hard time finding any kind of movie that is good to watch, so I usually end up watching documentaries. I'm not attracted to action, bloodlust films. I don't care about romances and sex and all that. In fact, I find that to be a turn-off. I don't really want that. And comedies are stupid. So I'm a hard case when it comes to finding a movie to watch. So documentaries are it. And I will sit with a tray in my lap full of springs and full of clothespin halves, and I'll just assemble these things for a couple of hours. And it works. It's productive use of evening time in the winter. Now, you got the idea there, the O'Neill pinner. Put these clothespins together very easily. Otherwise, it's a hassle. Thank you, Tom O'Neill. The guy is somewhat of a genius, actually. Now, I'm going to show you the next step, because after I have assembled the clothespins, and I have a whole bin of them. Actually, I have a whole bin of them right here that I assembled last night. Then there's another inspection and adjustment process. What I do is I open and close twice, and then I feel right here. Because what I'm feeling for is side bite. I don't want this thing to be like this. A lot of clothespins are. The early clothespins I made had a tendency to have a side bite. So if I assemble give it 2 open and closes, and then feel right here with my fingers, just like that. I can tell if that's in alignment. And this one happens to be. It's ever so slightly off, but you can't expect perfection with these kind of clothespins and springs. But it's very close enough. So that's done, and I'll put it in my box to package up. Now, it may be that I'll find, that one's pretty good too. Fortunately, most of them are. That one's pretty good too. It's getting near the fingertips. I should tell you, I should interrupt here to tell you that fingertips are incredibly sensitive to variations. I think I read somewhere that fingertips can tell if there's a variation down to a 10,000th of an inch. And I believe that. Auto body people will run their fingertips over the vehicle they're working on to see if there's any imperfections. And when I used to work in the trades doing drywall, you'd rub your hand over and you could feel imperfections. So most of these are doing pretty well, I'm glad to say. And now this one's off a little. Got a little bit of a side bite. That doesn't meet my standards. So what I do then, put it back in the O'Neill pinner, and I have to tweak the end of the spring end ever so slightly, put it back together and test it, and I like it. And I've done this enough to know how I need to tweak these, because every spring should be the same, but every spring is not the same. And if there's variations in the springs, sometimes there's certainly variations in the wood. Wood tends to warp and not go through the machinery quite as well as it could or should. I have a problem talking and working at the same time. Well, anyways, there's variations in wood. That's just the nature of wood. And it turns out there's variations in springs, ever so slight. And sometimes I can correct a side bite by just making a little bend. So I'll do that when needed. That one doesn't need it. Getting some good ones here. Sometimes I'll get a run of ones that do need to be adjusted. But I'm feeling the edge on every one, open and close twice. This one's a little off. I could see that it's this spring end, and I don't know if other clothespin makers go to this trouble, but I do. And because I mean, they're just clothespins, right? That's what some people think. They're just clothespins, but I am so persnickety about these things. When they go out, I want them to be as good as they possibly can. And they're not cheap. These are expensive clothespins, and I want them to be good, or as good as they can be, like I just said. Okay, so what you see here is a lot of work. I hope that's evident. An enormous amount of work to make these clothespins, time and effort. It's monotonous. It gets monotonous, and that's just the way it is. And that is part of the reason that I would never be able to scale this production up. I mean, I'm not going to find someone who's going to sit for hours and squeeze clothespins and adjust them and get them just right. It's not going to happen. So this is a solo business. It's something I plug away at, and it works for me. It works for other people. There's other people who buy springs from me and make clothespins, and you can go to goodclothespins.com and you can see a list of other makers, and I hope you will do that. Before I go, everyone, I want to just also show you that this is how I package up the clothespins. These are packages of 10. If someone orders 25, I just take 5 out and fold the top over. But while I'm here, I also wanted to show you this kimchi. My wife is making kimchi, and clothespins and kimchi go together, I think, really well. I'm being silly there, but right here, I just want to point out watermelon radish. There's lots of watermelon radish in here. You wouldn't know it. Oh yeah, you can see them. There they are. There they are. Watermelon radish from the garden. I had an episode about growing that, a couple of them. We've got carrots from the garden. We've got cabbage, garlic from the garden. And we don't use an airlock, or I should say my wife does not use an airlock. She's the kimchi making expert. She just puts some, get up here, some cabbage leaves on the top, puts a plate in there, puts a weight on it. As long as it stays submerged under the water, it's going to be just fine. That's how the old timers made it. Although they used crocks, not these glass jars, it's more fun to watch your kimchi make itself after you get it all set up. It's more fun to watch it make itself in a glass jar like this. But the old timers didn't have airlocks. They just used something akin to what you see here, a weight on top. And we're looking forward to that kimchi. We like kimchi far better than sauerkraut. And my wife says, make sure you grow those watermelon radishes again next year. So I will definitely be doing that. Bye-bye.